Hi, and welcome to another edition of 310 to Left, presented by your New England Ford Dealers and F-Series, the best-selling truck in America for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox. I'm Tom Karen, he's Alex Spear, and these are the times that try players' souls, I guess. Alex, we talked about the gauntlet. They had one of the easiest schedules, by opponent winning percentage in baseball, if not the easiest, over the first stretch of the season. Now you're getting into it. They got through Kansas City. That was a really good series. You saw what the Tigers are all about. You got a tough homestand with the Braves and Mets, and I know the Orioles have struggled, but there's still a lot of talent on that roster. They're going to have to prove themselves now against better teams, and it has been, as of now, inconsistent, right? It's a 500 team in just about any way you slice it, and they're going to have to be better than that. They're going to have to do it against good teams.
It feels like they're playing down to 500 too, right? Like this is a team that feels like it's had so many winnable games. We've seen lead after lead being blown in the sixth inning or later this season. 3-1 game on Tuesday is like that's a special kind of sequence of gut punches for a team. They look like a talented team. They look like a team that should be better than 500, but that for a number of reasons, whether it's the blown saves, whether it is defensive lapses, whether it is strikeouts with runners on third base and in fewer than 2 outs. Although I think that is a little bit exaggerated. Like I actually think that their overall numbers in that regard have generally been okay, but it looks really bad when those are in critical high leverage situations. We're seeing a team that hasn't been able to execute on the margins because if they had, they would have a much better record right now.
Yeah, 7 strikeouts with runners in scoring position in that excruciating game on Tuesday night. The sixth inning was the bad one, right? Bases loaded, 1 out. You had back-to-back strikeouts to end the threat. You wind up losing that game by a run. Half of their losses are by 1 run this year. So, you talk about those strikeouts, by far the most strikeouts with runners in scoring position of any team in Major League Baseball. Put a couple of those balls into play, you probably win a couple of those 1-run games. And I guess if you want to be a glass half full guy, and I'm trying really hard to be a glass half full guy, I guess you're that close, right? You're a couple of at-bats away from theoretically turning this whole thing around. But I said this in the last one, right? The 500 record at the 40-game mark is not what playoff teams have traditionally had. So a lot of time left. It's a bigger playoff field, so there's plenty of time to get this together. But like you said, you just feel like these opportunities are being squandered away. And it's hard not to think that those might come back to haunt you at the end of September if you don't turn it around soon.
Yeah, I mean, you end up regretting early. You oftentimes, if you end up missing the playoffs by a game or two, you end up thinking back to, that game that was right there for the taking in, insert one of first 4 months of the season. That's often what it is. And in this case, look, like you talk about the glass half full, the fact that the Red Sox have a bunch of strikeouts with runners in scoring position. Their strikeout rate with runners in scoring position is not runaway. They have had a lot of runners in scoring position. Their offense is putting them in position to score a lot of runs. They are not converting as often as they should. They've blown 13 leads in the sixth inning or later. They've had 13 leads to blow in the sixth inning or later. That means that they're not that far from having a lot more wins. But again, it's going to come down to execution at the margins. And, it is astonishing to watch what's been happening with the kind of whole bullpen relay. We were just talking about this off the air. The Red Sox this year in the 6th and 7th innings, their bullpen in high leverage situations, 6th and 7th inning, is allowing a .417 batting average, a .481 on base percentage, a .583 slugging mark. This is like a meltdown that's happening time after time after time. That's cost them a number of wins. They should have a better record than what they have.
And there's a couple pitchers specifically that you scratch your head right now, right? Garrett, Whitlock, who came back healthy and came back pitching really well. Now the last half dozen appearances have not been good at all. And his friend, his running partner, Tanner Houck, has been, just bewildered by what he sees out of himself. But let's start with Whitlock because, if they can't get him back on track, that's a really important cornerstone to that, 6, 7, 8 inning mix.
Yeah, Whitlock is a super interesting one to me because we just kind of took for granted, his arm looks healthy. He's throwing hard again. Well, He's coming off of a major surgery, and typically the byproduct of these major surgeries is that arm strength comes back, and then you reassert command. So what we're seeing is a different kind of Garrett Whitlock than we've basically seen at any point in his major league career, in which he's walking guys. He's walking guys regularly. He's getting ahead with 2 strike counts and then losing guys. I think that, and then when he is, and then you're also seeing he lamented his fastball command after the blown save on Tuesday. And then said, and so then Baez could just sit on a slider that ends up going right into the middle of the strike zone. We're seeing a lot with him. I do think that it starts with command, which has been the hallmark of Garrett Whitlock coming through the minors and into his Red Sox career, and it's just not there right now. We're seeing every game like right now. We're seeing a series of games. I think he has 9 walks, which is almost as many as he had in a full season in 2021. He has blown 4 saves in his last 5 outings. That's tied for the most in Red Sox history. He joins Junichi Tozawa and Bill Campbell in that ignominious club. This is not the same. It feels like we just assumed because Garrett Whitlock was throwing hard that he was back, and it's not as easy as that coming off of a surgery that cost him 3/4 of a season.
And what to make of Tanner Houck? An all-star last year, we know that, but even the second half last year, the numbers were not great. He's had 2 complete nuclear starts this year in which he didn't get through the 3rd inning and gave up 11 earned runs. They're staggering numbers. And again, that was as tough an interview as I've watched in a postgame show after his last start. Clearly bewildered, clearly no idea what's happening. I've heard our analysts go from he needs to throw more fastballs to watching the fastball get hit really hard to now he's got to go back to the sweeper, but he's having very little success getting anybody to chase that sweeper outside the zone. Alex Cora says he'll make the start Sunday, I think it is, against Atlanta. Where do they go from here? What do you do with Tanner Houck? Walker Buehler's on the horizon. What do you do with Tanner Houck right now?
Yeah, it's that's a tough one, right? There's a reason why Tanner Houck, after that start, said, "I am as lost as I have ever been." And he's had some pretty serious times of struggle, particularly early in his minor league career. He had at the beginning of his professional career in 2018, he could not command it. Houck is a tricky one because the delivery is unique. Right? There's a lot of stuff moving in a lot of places, and it's difficult to have everything synced up in a way that gets you consistent locations and results. And that's what made last year so fascinating. It was holy cow, you've managed to harness this in order to be able to have better direction to the plate that's allowed you to have greater repetition of your delivery, which in turn has allowed you to be able to have more predictable movement and location around it. And this year that just hasn't been the case, right? There are a lot of misses that are happening inside of the strike zone. And so that's why there's not a hiding spot, right? There's not the one pitch that you can say, okay, while I'm working through this funk, I can lean on that because I'm still able to execute the sweeper to both sides of the plate, or I'm still able to harness the fastball, the sinker glove side. It looks like there's going to need to be, unless he's able to lock in on being able to repeat the locations of that, it's kind of in a moment where it feels there's maybe not a fix unless there's a different pitch right now, right? Does he need to go 4-seamer more again, which has been a pitch of vulnerability in the past? But you're kind of in scramble mode, and it makes it incredibly challenging. Now, we shouldn't ignore the fact that when Tanner Houck was in Toronto, this was just a couple of weeks ago. He had one of the most dominant starts that we've seen over his big league career, right? Where he was throwing insanely hard. So you presume that he's feeling physically okay. The arm strength is there. It's just that the location, which was there for that one outing, where he was kind of executing to the edges of the zone rather than having everything just kind of bleed into the middle or miss by a ton with what Alex Cora often kind of describes as non-competitive misses. He's had a lot of non-competitive misses both in and out of the strike zone.
It's interesting, right? Because his 2 best starts of the year against Toronto. He's had 2 brilliant starts against Toronto, right? And prior to this outing, his worst start was Tampa Bay, and we know it's spring training, Tampa Bay. So it was sort of easy in my mind is, all right, Tampa Bay's got something. Toronto's got nothing on them. But then, you do start to wonder, are certain teams picking up something on him? Because it does seem to be a little bit team related. There are certain teams he has been brilliant against, but other teams seem to have his number.
Yeah, I have not been able to find anything yet digging on Houck with Whitlock. Actually, like it looks like one thing that's been interesting to me is it looks like he's been dropping. We have all these wonderful new statistics, like including arm angle, which is a thing that we hadn't been able to measure precisely in the past. Looks like he's dropping his arm angle on his changeup specifically, and we know what a devastating pitch that was in the past. So if hitters now only have to account for fastball slider, then that's a different kind of challenge that Whitlock. If you're able to identify changeup out of the hand based on the position of the arm, then that kind of simplifies the task of opposing hitters a lot and makes him a different pitcher. So that's the type of stuff, the granular stuff that you look for on Houck. Is the release point different on one of his pitches than the others? Maybe on the split, right? Like the split, which has been this pitch of tremendous vulnerability this year. Or is the arm angle changing? Is there some kind of a tell that is rendering one or more of his pitches essentially irrelevant and removing deception that should exist with a guy who has such a weird delivery?
Great questions, and I'm sure they're asking them, and we will continue to ask them as we try to figure this out watching these games. Meantime, another day has gone by, another series has gone by, and there's no movement on Rafael Devers playing first base. And the questions have even stopped. I thought for sure it would be a nightly question of Alex Cora. Is Rafael Devers taking any ground balls today? Maybe it'll go series by series. I'm sure it'll come back up, right? His first home game coming up on Friday after he made the comments after the last home game they played on that Thursday before they hit the road. But, we've got Mike Lowell coming on in a couple of minutes, and he's the perfect guy to talk about this, right? Because he went through the corner infielder move. He saw others go through the corner infielder move because of him. And he was a guy that Alex Cora brought in to work with Rafi Devers early in his career. So kind of the perfect guest that you lined up for us here to talk about Rafi Devers.
I went 3 for 3 on that one. Mike Lowell is.
By the way, the bad news is you're now the official assignment editor of 310 to Left. So congratulations.
Mike Lowell is truly everyone knows it. Like one of the most thoughtful players we've ever gotten a chance to cover. He was honestly, like the clubhouses that featured him and Alex Cora were incredible because you always had such immense baseball IQ of guys who were constantly available to talk about teammates and what they were seeing on the field, especially, and just the precision of the accuracy, the kind of what you can learn from talking to those guys was immense. And so it is a well-timed conversation with Mike Lowell, who has a lot of ability to relate to and observe the Rafi Devers situation, I think.
Yeah, let's get right to it. I also want to ask him about, his battle with cancer as a young player, because we're watching Liam Hendriks come back from that now before our eyes. But we'll get to that later. First, we'll talk to him about Rafael Devers and that whole situation. Let's bring him in. 2007 World Series MVP of the Boston Red Sox. It's Mike Lowell on 310 to Left, presented by your New England Ford dealers. So excited to have Mike Lowell joining us on the show today. Mike, how you doing?
I am good. How are you guys doing? Thanks for having me. I think this is my first Tom, Karen, Alex Spire combo.
Hopefully not the last. Hopefully this won't deter you from any future appearances. But
That's right.
We'll see. We might have a shelf life.
We might scare you out of broadcasting completely after this happens.
No.
Listen, it's great to have you here because we've been talking a lot about position changes, right, with the Rafael Devers stuff, and you've seen it in a couple of different ways over the course of your career, even just in the Red Sox time, right? Like Kevin Youkilis adapting, you adapting when Adrian Beltre comes. Sort of take us through from the player's mentality, when that sort of either has to happen or the opportunity that it could happen. Like, what's the mentality of the player?
Well, I think every situation's a little different. Like for me, my first switch came in pro ball. I played second base and shortstop in high school and college. So when they told me I was going to play third, honestly, I was a little disappointed because I was like, man, guys have to hit for power at third base. And, I was skinny, a late bloomer. But I think it came down to it was third base or nothing. So you're going to do whatever you can. So I think every phase of your career kind of presents, a different situation. In 2010, you know, I just, after my hip surgery, I knew I wasn't the same player. And I had to kind of look in the mirror a little bit and understand that Adrian Beltre is a better defensive third baseman than me at that time, future Hall of Famer. And if I didn't take ground balls at first, and I wasn't willing to make the switch over if the circumstances needed, I wouldn't have played. So I just wanted to play. You know, for me, the at bats were the most important thing. I think with Rafi, you know, the situation is a little different. I think his feelings were hurt initially because I wasn't, obviously, I'm not in that clubhouse. I'm not in the conversations prior to spring training. But from what he says, it has led me to believe that he totally thought Alex Bregman was coming in to play second base. I didn't know Christian Campbell was going to be that good. I don't think anyone did. I don't think it was a for sure thing that was going to be his spot. Now, you know, baseball is very fluid. Things happen. Guys get hurt. You know, some guys, you know, figure things out. Some guys have down years, you know, better than expected years. So I think that's part of the situation where, okay, what did spring training provide us? And it was that Campbell's a real player. And then when Bregman's going to take ground balls at third, I mean, he's coming off a Gold Glove third base season. And I want to start by saying I love Rafael Devers. Love watching him play. I think he's a good kid. The crux of him, I think, is good. But when you look at the numbers, he rates at the bottom of the barrel defensively. And it's not 1 year. It's like 6, 7 years in a row. So I think it would be a little bit, I don't know what the right word is, but maybe an unfair assessment to think that you staying at third is better for the team than Alex Bregman. So, okay, the DH thing was presented. I know he wasn't too happy about it. He started off slow. I think that was more of a product of not getting at bats in spring training. And then, you know, he's kind of looks like he's back to where he was. I don't think anyone plans on your first baseman blowing out his knee and being gone for 12 months. So that presents a different situation. You know, I don't think, you know, his comments, I think, are out of frustration. And I think it's coming to a point where he feels like maybe he's being tossed around as the solver of all the problems. Well, pitchers get hurt. They're not going to ask you to pitch. An outfielder gets hurt. They're not going to ask you to play outfield. But first base seems to be kind of this normal transition for guys that have played third or guys that have caught, you know, and if you've played third base in the big leagues, trust me, the move to first is easier. Like I don't want to downplay that first base is an easy position to play. I think for no one who has played that position, it's a big adjustment. But for someone who's played the infield, no, it's an easier position to play. You have plenty of time. You have a pitcher who's a safety valve for you covering the base, and the throws are much easier. So honestly, if it came to that, and I hate to think of what's going on in the conversation because anytime John Henry gasses up the plane and says, I'm going to go talk to you, I'm sure things, you know, were pretty serious, you know. So I think it's an opportunity for Rafi, honestly, to say, hey, you know, I've thought things through. My goal is to win. Like, and that's where I say nothing against Romy or Toro, but I think if you have the DH flexibility and guys like Yoshida, like what does Yoshida do on that team? Like he doesn't play, he doesn't get at bats at DH. Like he's a wasted roster spot. Could he help? I think he can. He showed at points, you know, last year that he can help. So in the end, I think you've got to just take a step back and be like, well, what's better for the team? And I think if Rafi does make that transition, which a lot of people thought he was going to do anyways, end up at first, I actually think he could be a plus defender. I think he could be an asset at first base. And then imagine that. Look at Fernando Tatis. He's one of the best right fielders. No one thought that would happen. So it could work. I think it could work.
It's really interesting, and obviously you have some great perspective on Rafi as a defender because you've gotten a chance to work with him in some past spring trainings. I was actually a little bit surprised because, like, I'm used to the idea that that players who quote unquote move down the defensive position spectrum end up being elite at those positions, right? Like the shortstops end up being the great outfielders, right? The Tatis scenario that you just outlined. Interestingly, like there are very few instances of third basemen going to first base and becoming Gold Glovers there. There's Vlad Guerrero, and then before that, it was Euclid. And then there's not another one since like 1980 in the American League. What are the... I guess it's worth asking, why do you think that Rafi has attributes that would work well at first base? And what are some of the, you mentioned some of the easy aspects of it, like if you're an infielder, what are some of the hardest parts of third base to first base?
Well, I backtrack a little, Alex, because I wouldn't ask Rafi to be a Gold Glove first baseman. Just be a good one. And I think using Euclid and the other guys as an example is saying, wow, those guys made fantastic transitions. I don't think he has to make this world-changing transition. I would say the biggest thing that you'll realize is that you have time, especially coming from third base, because I noticed that if I blocked the ball and it was in front of me, well, I had to hurry to get that ball because I have a long throw over to first. So I think when I moved over to first, it was more, I realized, wow, I have a lot of time. I can almost just tackle this ball, just make sure it doesn't get by me because I'm going to have the pitcher covering first. Now, are there nuances to first base? Absolutely. I think picks at first, but you can do that every day with the infield instructor till the cows come home and really get better. The reason why I think he could be good is I think his hands are good. I think the main thing where Rafi, for me, when I look at him getting in trouble defensively, is I think it's his footwork, and then I think his arm angle drops a little. He gets a little bit lazy in that sense. But I think the throws from first, like that quick throw to second, I know you have to turn all the way to your right instead of a smooth, movement from third throwing over to second. But those aren't where his errors are. That short, quick throw, I think he's very capable of doing that. And the last thing is learning what pitchers, who gets off the mound quick to time it, lefties, righties. There are things absolutely that you need to learn at first base, but I don't think it's anything so complicated that he can't do. I think he's totally capable of doing it. And once again, I don't know what was told to him. Like maybe in spring training they say, hey, you're never going to play first. I would really doubt that message was sent to him that he's never going to play another position, because most guys at some point in their careers change positions, at least temporarily, let's say.
So I guess the question, Mike, is if they go that route, how long does it take? Like how much work, if you haven't been taking any grounders at the position, because he hasn't, and you didn't do a lot in spring training because you had a shoulder. So now you're sort of picking up the defensive part of your game from scratch, right, from ground zero. How long would it take for somebody to sort of get up to speed to be that adequate defensive first baseman?
2 days. Like he could do it in 2 days. I think he's good enough. He really is. The ground balls aren't going to come any harder. He's just going to have positioning where he could figure it out. You see all the outfielders, they take their hat off, they're looking at positioning. He can look at the infield coach and the guy can tell him 2 steps over, 1 step to the left, 2 steps to the right. I mean, it can be done. It can be done. Can he work on the flips and the throw to second? Yeah, I think he's capable. I mean, it's not like, I think, for example, Bryce Harper moving from right field to first base, I think that takes a little longer. Bryce Harper doesn't get ground balls at the pace in right field like a third baseman or a second baseman or a shortstop might get. So I wouldn't say Bryce Harper 2 days, but someone of Bryce Harper's talent and ability, 2 weeks, to feel like you can be adequate. Now, can he be above average? Yeah, it's not going to take 2 days. I think it's going to be a little bit more. But that process, I think, is shorter than people think. I really do. I really believe that.
So I guess stepping back, in some of the, obviously there is a component of this that relates to how communication has happened between Rafi Devers and the organization. Some of it also relates to defensive identity. Like Rafi has felt so strongly, so passionately about doing the work to stay at third base, right? And I watched it since he was an A-ball as a 17-year-old, taking a bazillion ground balls in the stinking humidity of Greenville. How difficult can it be for players to accept, who kind of wrap up their on-field identity at a specific position to say, I'm cool with this? What are instances that you've seen of players struggling to accept a position change?
I don't know, off the top of my head. I look at more in the pitching standpoint, like that closer that now is maybe a setup man or not in high leverage situation. I'm sure there are scenarios. But I think for Rafi, I said at the beginning of his career, I think he was a product. It was a blessing and a curse. He's such a gifted hitter that he got to the big leagues really quickly. And I don't think it allowed him to have time to kind of work out all those things that you learn. He kind of learned at the big league level. And when you're learning in Boston under a microscope, I think it's even harder. So when I moved over to third, I still remember in Oneonta, New York, I think I made 26 errors in 54 games. It's hard to make that many errors. But then I went to Greensboro and I played 135 games. And then I went to Norwich and I played another 135 games. Then I played another full season. I had 3 years, and I really could say that I felt it took me about 2.5 years to really understand the angles at third base because it was just so different from short and second. Like short and second, you can kind of come around the ball, much different, routes and responsibilities. And at third, I found it to be such a reactionary position. I wasn't used to it. It was step and a dive. So I needed time. And Rafi at 17, is knocking on the door. So being so young and so good, I think, did not help him in his defensive development. But on the other side, I'm not going to hold him back from going to the big leagues when he's a big league caliber player, or hitter, which he absolutely showed he was. Now, I think Rafi's biggest fear is that if he moves to first or accepts the move to first, he'll never see third again. And that's it's a pretty real scenario, and I think that's where it gets there, because I don't know what's going to happen in the next 3, 5, 7. I don't know. He's got like 8 years left on his deal. Is he going to stay with the Red Sox forever? Who knows? Bigger names have been traded, and that possibility of ever playing third again, like let's say his defensive metrics at first are average. What team is going to be like, yeah, give me that average first baseman and let's put him back to third base where he was below average? That's going to be a tough. I don't think he backtracks to third if he goes to first, and I think that's his biggest sticking point of why he's probably reluctant to do this.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like one of the only instances of a player backtracking was like when Miguel Cabrera ended up moving back from first to third when the Tigers ended up.
And it was a disaster.
And right, that probably
that
played a significant part in costing them the 2013 ALCS because they were outfielded by the Red Sox in that series. So you have context for clubhouse controversy, right? Like you know what it is to have to see things like the Devers, like the Devers media session in Boston specifically. How does that settle into a clubhouse? How difficult is it, if at all, for the rest of a team to navigate this kind of frosty dynamic that very clearly exists?
It could and it couldn't. I would say, for example, my biggest clubhouse dynamic was Manny in '08. When he wanted his option years picked up. Mind you, I loved Manny. Like every 2 out of 3 days on the road, I would go with him and Alex Cora. We would work out. Like I really enjoyed Manny's company and as a teammate. However, I think the biggest issue the teammates had was Manny never spoke to the media. And then when he came out with his statement that he wants the option years picked up, and I don't know why they won't do it for all the years I did, he leaves, and his locker, as you know, is by the training room, and then he doesn't talk to the media again. So what does the media do? They ask all the other guys about Manny. And I think baseball players are pretty good, and professional athletes are pretty good about compartmentalizing things. But one thing I don't want to do as part of my preparation day in, day out for a game is talk about someone else. Like, I don't care. Like, I care from a team standpoint, but I really feel like you're kind of wasting my time. Now, I understand. I am part of a team. You are someone that his teammate, they want to know how you feel. But I'm going to give you the political answer, which I think a lot of players are doing. Now, behind closed doors, I don't know who are the closest teammates to Rafi. I'm sure some guys would be like, man, don't cause any more drama for yourself. Because I think they're lucky they've been on the road at first. And honestly, his first couple games, he goes 4 for 4 and 2 for 3. So he's pretty good at compartmentalizing himself. My concern for him moving forward is if the Red Sox get no production out of first base, and there's this possibility of Rafi being the guy that could maybe plug that hole, do the fans start getting a little bit upset? And it's hard for someone to make $30 million to make a stand when fans pay the money they pay to watch players because you refuse to move to another position when potentially you could make the team better. That's where I think it could turn. But once again, I think Rafi could turn this into a real good positive. I really think he can. Hey, I was emotional. Looking back at it, I'm just hurt because third base is really close to me. It's the position I've known. I've worked really hard to be as good as I can be. But my goal is to win championships for the city of Boston. And I talked to Alex Cora and I talked to Mr. Henry, and I'm willing to try it. I don't want it to be a permanent stamp on me, but I'm willing to try it for the good of the team. How do you think the fans and the media are going to react to that? You know, I think it could be, he could turn it into a positive, and maybe the team takes off a little bit. Who knows? I mean, they've suffered some. I saw the Toronto series; they lose 2 games that they should have won. Last night was a killer. So, you know, maybe a little bit of mojo goes the other way. I believe in the baseball gods. I really do. I think sometimes they kind of put you in your place a little bit, like the damn golf gods with my golf game going on. You know, they tell me not to get mad at a bad swing, but I get mad. I'm sorry, and then there's more bad ones. So that's how it goes.
Better than their treatment of me when I would just hold up a club and get struck by lightning, go straight Caddyshack style. You know, it is interesting.
Golf atheist. Alex, you're a golf atheist. I think that's
fair enough. Fair enough. Top golf only. But I am, you did mention how Rafi is hitting through, continues to hit through this, how amazing, is that remarkable for a player to be able to separate kind of this chaos or this, this kind of this strange dynamic surrounding what's happening in one area, especially off the field, and to be able to kind of narrowly focus, to me, I don't know, it kind of blows my mind. I would have expected one to bleed into the other. You, as someone who knows what it is to be a Major League Baseball player, what do you think when you see a player thriving in the middle of controversy?
Well, I think being at the plate is like Rafi's happy place, and you've seen it with a lot of other people where, someone in their family's sick and they still put up good numbers. I think the question I get asked the most about my career is, how do you tune out all the people yelling? And I said, I don't hear them. Now, mind you, that's a learned behavior. When I was in high school and I played in front of 1,000 fans, I was nervous. When I went to college and played in front of 4,000, 1,000 seemed like nothing. I was nervous. When I got to AAA and it was fireworks night and it was 17,000, I was like, oh my God, look at all these people. 4,000 meant nothing. So you learn to tune things out. And I think Rafi has that ability, much like a lot of other guys, to, okay, I'm going to tune everything out and focus on my at-bats. And he's so gifted as a hitter that you saw what he can do. He can literally put the Red Sox on his back and carry the team for 7-10 days. He gets that hot and he's that valuable. So, I think the organization has to walk a little bit of a fine line of saying, we can't take this hard stance on a guy and want him out of here. I hear people, let's trade him. I'm like, well, you're not going to trade him. You're going to have to swallow money and all this because his value is low if people think he's a problem. If you got to the point you want to trade him, I don't want to trade him. He's our best player. So there has to be, I think, a happy medium of understanding, hey, we value you as the face of our franchise, but I think you have to value us at what we do to try to put the best product on the team. And in a perfect world, guess what? Tristan Casas would be hitting 300 with 9 home runs by now. But guess what? It's not the case. So what can we do? Rafi, if you're the manager, tell me what you do. Make us the best team. What do we do? And I think that might be a way to kind of see things from a different lens. I think if anything's helped me with what I do at MLB Network is I kind of see it now from a different lens, and I don't know, you see both sides a little bit, and I don't know, I guess the best way to say it is I respect the argument of both sides a little bit more.
One aspect of this, Mike, I want to ask you about, and it doesn't have to necessarily be about Rafi Devers, but where the contract factors into this, right? I mean, guys who make $100 million plus, you get a little more drama with that for a number of reasons, right? These are the best players in the game. These are guys who have put in a career that has, there was drama around Manny. There was drama around David. You said it. I covered the 04, those teams. There was drama every night. There's not a lot of drama in Tampa Bay, right? There's not a lot of guys there. So, if you told Rob Refsnyder he had to play first base, there'd be no drama. Rob Refsnyder would take his glove and go play first base, right? But that's the reality. I know fans don't always want to hear that, right? But there is a hierarchy within any clubhouse. And sometimes drama comes from your superstars. There's drama in the NBA every night, right? That's just the reality of it. That's real. Right? I mean, the way you handle a $300 million player is different from the way you handle a rookie, right? That's just reality in a clubhouse.
Oh, yeah. And I would say, okay, let's flip this whole scenario around. Let's say you are a 19-year-old super prospect, which Rafi was at one point, and on your team is Alex Bregman, a Gold Glove winning third baseman, and I say to you, you can stay in AAA if you don't want to play third base, but if you want to be in the big leagues, I got two options for you. It's going to be DH, or maybe I'm going to move you to first. What would Rafi Devers say? 100%. I'll sit on a bucket
Right.
to be in the big leagues. So yes, with contracts and production, some leverage does come, but that's why I say that it comes to a point where you got to draw a line in the sand and be like, okay, if you were a second-year player, would you take this stance? No chance. You're a third-year player? No chance. So the contract does play into a fact because they know, what are they going to do? They're not going to release him. So there is a little bit of that dynamic. And I would just look at Alex Bregman. Alex Bregman was the second pick overall, a shortstop. Well, he moved to third. Why? Carlos Correa was there. A lot of guys like this isn't something that just comes out of the blue and we're asking one guy to do. And I just go back to the fact that two things. He has not been a very good defensive third baseman when you have a really good one on your team right now. And I don't think moving to first is like purgatory for you. Like you could be a really good first baseman. We're not asking you to like not play. If anything, it seemed like what I took is he was hesitant to DH because he liked being on the field. Well, we're giving you the opportunity to be on the field. Which one is it? So it's not an easy situation. Once again, I don't think he's a bad kid. I think the team understands that you need a focused and, let's call it, happy Rafi Devers for the team to be at their best. But I think flexibility is part of the game, and the teams that are most flexible have the opportunity to plug holes and win more ball games than others. Those really good teams are the ones that they're better. The sum is so much greater than the individual parts. And why can't the Red Sox be that? It could,
Mike, a totally separate subject, but while we have you, I want to ask you, you talked about being at the plate, being an escape from what's happening. You're 26 years cancer-free. Congratulations. But you went through that as a player, right? And we've got Liam Hendriks now coming out of the bullpen. When you see somebody like that who's been through what he's been through, what does that make you feel? How do you watch what Liam Hendriks is doing right now?
I mean, honestly, I hope he throws 105 by everyone every single pitch. It's kind of a weird fraternity to be a part of. But when I talk to John Crook or Andres Galarraga lives here in Miami, I run into him every once in a while, and I'm like, I'm so happy that I kind of was part of that group that could overcome something. So yes, I mean, 26 years, Tom, and look at me, I still get kind of choked up about it because I know what I had to go through mentally and the struggle of is cancer going to be what takes away what I've worked so hard for, and I think Liam Hendriks, who, by the way, might be the best interview in baseball. He's so candid and so good with the way of words. But honestly,
7-second
I look
delay,
at him
though.
and
I don't know if 7-second delay is long enough for Liam
yeah,
Hendriks.
that might be true. But when I see him, I was just like, I just want him to pound strikes and just dominate because you do root for someone. You kind of relate to what guys have gone through. And I look back and it hurt me to see John Lester leave a Red Sox uniform. But when I saw him go to take the mound every day, I was like, man, I hope this guy throws 8 innings, 2 hits, no runs. You get to that point because your dream, you achieved your dream, and it got sidetracked from nothing you did or lack of preparation. Like, you want to see those guys not let that be the reason why you can't continue to live out this thing that you hope to accomplish since you were a kid.
When John Lester was first coming back, I remember him telling me, I can't wait to just be a pitcher again and not be the pitcher who conquered cancer. Right? Liam Hendriks told me last year, he goes, I can't wait till I get booed in another city and not getting a standing ovation every time, right? Do you remember that? Like, just, not just being a story, but being a ball player again. How much did that mean to you?
It was a big deal, because once again, going back to the distraction, and I understood it. Every place I went to, the Marlins were not a high profile team. What story are you going to write about? So a lot of when we were on the road, a lot of the beat writers of the other teams would ask me, and I just felt like I remember talking to my dad and saying, I just want the cancer questions to stop, because I want to focus on baseball. Now, at 24, when you're diagnosed, I think you get a little dose of reality of what, little perspective quick. So I didn't get upset with those people because I understood where they're coming from. It's a different story. It's something you don't, hear about every day. But I kind of wanted to be like, I think it took about a year. And then when I put together a decent 2000 season, and especially in 01, I felt like, okay, now people were looking at me as a baseball player, and then occasional cancer survivor, which I'm proud I was able to overcome it. But again, I think baseball players are kind of creatures of habit, where I like my routine. I want to get prepared in my way, and then anything that sidetracks it, okay, how do we make the adjustment? But when it's the same thing over and over again, you do want it to pass. But I think Liam's in a different place where he's a little older. He's more mature, and I think he's taken a great, route where he's not shying away from it, and I think he has the whole baseball community rooting for him, and he deserves that.
Mike, well, a completely separate thing, but I have been curious through this whole interview. Right over your shoulder, Pete Rose signed jersey there.
Yes,
Hall of Famer.
Well, if you have 2 minutes, I have a really good story.
Okay.
I go back to my sophomore year in college. It was my speech class, and we had to make 3 speeches. One of them was argumentative. So this is 1994. And my speech was why Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. So that's your answer to that. Do I feel like it? That jersey right there, you'll like this one. I think it was 2000. Tony Perez, who's a special assistant to the GM with the Marlins, was getting inducted into Hall of Fame. Maybe 99 or right around there. Ryan Dempster just made the All-Star team, and we, on our off day, we played an exhibition game against the Milwaukee Brewers. Trust me, the Marlins and the Brewers were not happy to get to Cooperstown to play an exhibition game. But I get a call in the hotel room asking me if I wanted to do an autograph signing. And I'm like, autograph? Who's going to want my autograph? So he says, well, we have Kevin Millar and Ryan Dempster. I think they're confirmed. So I said, can I answer you in 5 minutes? They said, yes. So I called Kevin in his room, and I said, hey, are you doing this thing? He says, you know what? I don't care if I don't sign one autograph. We'll hang out with Pete Rose, and I'm going to buy a Pete Rose jersey and have him sign it. I said, you know what? I'll join you. I'll do it. Needless to say, at this autograph signing, Tony Perez has a nice line waiting for him. He's a newly inducted Hall of Famer. Pete Rose's line is probably 3 blocks long. It was amazing, the number of people that wanted his autograph. Ryan Dempster had just been named an all-star. He probably had a line of 25 people, and I was getting $8 a signature. I think I made $32. All right. Millar probably made 40 because he convinced 2 people to just make a sign. So whatever. So it was not a good financial investment for my time. And I said, well, the jersey's probably going to cost me $200. We'll do it. When we're leaving, we go up to the owner of the store that hosted this autograph signing, and we said, hey, is there a chance you could have Pete? He goes, I got one better. He goes, ahead of time, I got his rookie replica jersey, and Pete already signed it for you. I was like, ooh, wow, look, it worked out. So that's hanging right there. What's behind me? Oh, I got Nolan Ryan, Manny, as we mentioned, and then what do we got? Oh, look, that's the 07 All-Star team. Yeah, that one's signed by the whole American League team. So we got some good ones. I don't know if my iPad's going to fall or what, but this is my good man cave. What do we got?
Oh, there you go.
We got, Tony Gwynn, Piazza, Schill. Oof. Who's that? Ripken, Pedroia.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's a good one. It's a good good place to watch sporting events here.
Wait, to be clear, that's a Pedroia jersey, not a Millar jersey?
It is. Yeah, it's a Pedroia jersey. I think I have Millar. I have Marlins Millar. I don't know.
There you go.
That's like vintage now. That's vintage.
Yeah.
Available for $8 a signature, and he will.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think we're both right back to right around that $6 or $8 market. So we'll sell our souls to the devil for enough.
Mike, it was a great conversation. We really appreciate the visit. Thanks so much for coming on with us. Great stuff from Mike Lowell. Of course, you can see him on MLB Network. He does such a great job with them. But to me, the thing that came away with more than anything is that it wasn't a peace sign. It was 2 days. He thinks Rafael Devers could be ready at first base in 2 days. So that's far quicker than I thought he would say.
Yeah, that was not what I was expecting. 2 months, 2 weeks, nope, 2 days. That was an eye opener. But but of course, like part of that is also based on just a willingness to throw yourself into it. And one of the things that's always interesting is that like through in many walks of life, not just in baseball, but also in baseball, like are you willing to be a person who makes mistakes? That's how you learn really quickly, right? Like if you're willing to make mistakes while learning a foreign language, you learn the foreign language faster. If you are willing to if you're comfortable making mistakes, then you pick up things faster, right? Like that was one of the beauties of the Kyle Schwarber moment when he was learning first base in the ALDS back in 2021, right? Like he botches a couple plays, then makes a routine one, and to the delight of everyone, like throws his arms up in triumph. And it's not an easy thing. Not everyone can be comfortable making mistakes. And so, what threshold do you set for how good you have to be somewhere before you're willing to try it? That's an interesting question.
It'll be interesting to see, because to me, the thing is, how do you do it? Like, how do you get Rafi Devers, if you go this route, right? If you say, all right, he's going to take some time here, he's going to learn the position. The first day he is out there, the first afternoon he's out there, it becomes a mega story, right?
Yeah.
Rafael Devers is taking grounders at first base at 2:00 in the afternoon at Fenway Park. Once you cross that line, there's no turning back, right? He's now going. You can't say, nah, it's not working out, we're not going to do it, because that becomes even a bigger story, right? I think that's the tough part here. You can't do it behind closed doors.
I mean, theoretically, you could if you did it at very different hours of the day, rather than having it be once the cameras are making their way to the field. But that doesn't serve any purpose either, right? Like you have to be able to do it in a publicly visible setting, because you're getting ready to do it. You would be getting ready to play in games in a very publicly visible setting. So, there can't be any hiding if they go this route. And, it remains to be seen whether or not they do.
All right, I want to ask you real quickly here before we wrap it up. Atlanta Braves coming to town. We mentioned this the other day. Still looking like Chris Sale, Garrett Crochet. This is going to be electric, I would think. Friday night should be a lot of fun at Fenway. With, by the way, the new City Connects are expected to be debuted this weekend. So there's going to be a lot of buzz around the ballpark.
That's a lot of juice to a game in the middle of May. And yeah, I mean we've seen Chris Sale through the years. We know how he relishes the energy of a ballpark. We're getting a feel for that with Garrett Crochet, and these are two pitchers with premier electric stuff, and you really hope that it lives up to what it could be.
What does it mean to Crochet? Again, we in the media hype up these matchups, but much like Hunter Dobbins going up against Tarek Skubal, right? But this is ace versus ace. What do you think it means to Crochet to sort of lock up in a marquee matchup with a Chris Sale?
Yeah, I've gotten the sense, at least based on the brief career that he's had as a starter, that he really likes to he sought out matchups against Skubal last year. He sought out matchups. He kept pushing to be on the mound at the end of last season against the Tigers when they were pushing for a playoff spot, because he wanted that juice, and because he wanted to prove that he could be a guy who would post for the full 32 starts of a season. But yeah, I don't think that Garrett Crochet is the retiring type. Like that does not seem, at least in our brief sample, what he's all about. So yeah, I think that he does not seem like someone who's putting on blinders, and I hope not. Like you want someone who's able to channel that buzz of Fenway when it exists into something that can be special.
That should absolutely be buzzing. Friday night at Fenway, the Atlanta Braves come to town, and we of course, Friday night Fenway, will have 90 minutes of pregame coverage. Going to be electric. The new jerseys,
unless Chris Sale cuts them.
It is interesting, isn't it? Of all the nights to unveil a new jersey, you're doing it against Chris Sale. I mean, it's the first thing you think of. I've seen some things. I don't think there's any collars on them. I don't think that'll be a problem.
No
And he doesn't
short.
have to wear
Yeah,
no
there
shorts.
you go.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no shorts. Okay, well, there you go. Lots to look forward to this weekend. You got the Braves coming in, the Mets next week. We'll be back then to talk about that and a whole lot more. Good stuff, Alex. Again, great job as the assignment editor. Not a bad job as the co-host. So it's important to be versatile.
Playing, middle of the fairway, Tom. Middle of the fairway.
Yeah, moving third to first without a problem. That's Alex Spear. I'm Tom Karen. We'll see you again next time. Thanks for checking out this edition of 310 to Left, presented by your New England Ford dealers and F-Series, the best-selling truck in America for 48 years and the official truck of the Boston Red Sox. We'll see you next time.